Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Firas Patel. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, TSTV channel 347. Now, this week, the International Court of Justice is holding hearings to gauge Israel's responsibility for the humanitarian crisis engulfing Gaza during its current genocide. Yesterday, Palestine had delivered its hearings, and early this morning, of course, South Africa had delivered its hearings. Joining me now from Berlin in Germany, I'd like to welcome Anisha Patel, who is part of Law for Palestine. Anisha, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
It's an absolute pleasure. Anisha, I just want to, before we start off, of course, with Palestine's presentation, South Africa, of course, delivered its presentation. This is on the back, of course, of its ICJ case that it brought against Israel last year. I just want to get your take on South Africa's presentation. It kind of felt more of the same, didn't it? Of course, just adding to the fact that Israel, once again, is not just blocking humanitarian aid, but it's failing to uphold some of the deliberations that were given by the ICJ last year.
Absolutely. And like you pointed out, this is actually really critical to the discussion right now, because what Israel is primarily doing amongst the multiple violations of international law that it is committing, the core at our hand right now is the violation of the Genocide Convention and the preliminary measures orders that the case has been kind of discussed at the court through South Africa. And this is really important because this is at the heart of Israel's attempts at eliminating the Palestinian people as a whole, and Gaza as a part of it, but this expands to a much larger conversation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. So yes, it's kind of a little bit of what has already been brought forward by South Africa and also elaborated in their memorials, written submissions. But it's really at the heart of this conversation.
Anisha, let's touch, of course, on the presentation from Palestine. They've, of course, mentioned the Nakba once again, and I think there is a lot of significance with regards to that. I mean, how important was that going back in time to the Nakba important in this presentation, given that was once a people with a land have now become refugees in many parts of not just the world, but also within the Middle East?
The Nakba, and I really appreciate how the Palestinian legal team articulated this yesterday. The Nakba is absolutely at the heart of this process because it's still ongoing. The Nakba that began in 1947 is still unfolding before our eyes as we speak. And it's also the critical reason why the UN is present in the capacity that it is present in Palestine. And the legal question that the court is addressing currently, or listening to oral proceedings for, looks at the role of Israel and its obligations to allow humanitarian aid into Palestine. So we need to understand first and foremost why this role exists. So as we have seen yesterday, for 77 years, the right of return of the Palestinians has been denied, and this is entirely by Israel and its actions. And the UN and its resolutions are critical to this process of the establishment of the State of Israel, and hence kind of the lack of the possibilities of the Palestinian people returning. Having fully destroyed the ability of the Palestinian people to sustain themselves independently, Israel is now weaponizing the assistance that it has first made necessary for the Palestinian people. And hence it's kind of, the Nakba is then again the start of this process, as it were.
Anisha, you mentioned, of course, aid. As we said right now, the Rafah border, it's still closed. No aid is being allowed. The people of Palestine, the residents of that part of the enclave, are down to their bare bones, and I mean this in a literal and figurative way in terms of getting any food or medicine in there. You heard it from the Palestinian legal team yesterday. This is, of course, another violation of human rights. The fact that this aid is not being allowed, it really does hamper any chance of not just the residents getting aid, but the fact that they are now on the brink, or actually they are in a situation of famine. And it's getting worse in terms of the medical entire situation right there.
Absolutely. And again, to kind of circle back to this idea that allowing aid into the occupied Palestinian territory, including in Gaza, is not incumbent on negotiations, is not incumbent on a ceasefire. It is not something that Israel is supposed to do out of the goodwill of its heart. It is a legal obligation on Israel, firstly as a member of the UN, but also as an occupying power and unlawfully present actor in the occupied Palestinian territory. So allowing aid, humanitarian assistance of all kinds, including medical, but also food, is Israel's duty. It's not something that it can choose to ignore. It's bound by this duty on the basis of several international legal frameworks. There are ICC arrest warrants against the Israeli Prime Minister and Foreign Defense Minister, and one of the violations there is starvation as a method of warfare. And these are already back from last November. So this idea of weaponizing starvation, weaponizing aid, and creating famine is absolutely been a tactic of Israel from the beginning. It is something that has been addressed in the provisional measures in the South Africa case, and is at this point in time, it's really critical that third states push Israel to allow aid inside, because now this obligation also, as rightly articulated yesterday by the Palestinian legal team, is an obligation of third states to prevent genocide from happening.
Anisha, impunity. I don't think we've seen impunity being practiced at its highest from what we have seen since October the 7th, 2023. 2 deliberations were given by the ICJ, one last year to stop any acts of aggression against the residents of Gaza, and the other for Israel to withdraw from its occupied territories. Israel has not adhered to that. When we speak of impunity, it really does show that Israel's really acting as if it is a state that can do what it wants, how it wants, when it wants, and in all honesty, they're just going to get away with it. Are we seeing this in terms of the highest impunity within international law right now?
I think you've really articulated the situation well. Israel is absolutely exercising complete impunity in everything that they do. But we have to really understand why this is possible. This is possible because third states allow for this to happen. The international legal order rests on states kind of being held accountable by everybody else, all other member states. And for as long as states such as the USA and others allow for Israel to operate with complete impunity, continue to supply it with arms, with other goods that allow for this unlawful situation to continue, we will see this impunity continue. On the other side, we have seen the case brought forward by South Africa against Israel, but also by Nicaragua against Germany for its support in the arms delivery that it's providing to Israel. We've seen the Hague group of states, of which South Africa is a member. So there are now channels which are being created to leverage international law to end this impunity. But this impunity is really deeply ingrained into the international legal framing, as it were. That's where we're...
Yeah, Anisha, one final question. These hearings, at the end of it, what would be the end game? What would be the outcome of this? I ask this because it's quite clear Israel's not really going to abide to it. By the end of this week, they're going to continue the bombing. They're going to continue the destruction of Gaza. And of course, they're going to get the upper hand from its allies, especially the United States of America. So many of the viewers watching this asking, okay, so what really is going to take place? How does the world stamp its international footprint on Israel? Is there going to be some sort of light at the end of the tunnel where Israel finally has to answer for the destruction and the devastation it has not only caused in Gaza, because of course a lot of this is down to Gaza, but also on the other occupied territories such as the West Bank?
There will be light at the end of the tunnel, or so I hope. And the idea is that Israel's continued impunity because of the leeway that third states like the US and others give it is endangering the entire international legal framing as we understand it. The world order rests on this agreement that all states do what they're supposed to do in line with the charter, which is not commit acts of aggression, annexation, starvation, so on and so forth. So it is in the interest of the rest of the world, of the states, but more importantly of the people. And this is where larger mass mobilization comes into the picture, and kind of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movements and other movements that allow individuals to kind of push for the impunity to end are really critical, because as our colleagues in the US and other geographies have been telling us, the Palestinians are like the canary in the coal mine. What is happening to the Palestinians today will continue to happen and expand to the other peoples in the world. So it is really, really critical that we kind of focus our attention on bringing an end to the complete impunity with which Israel is acting, and enforce international legal principles in Israel so as to allow for these principles to also be applied to other peoples in other places across the world.
Anisha, thank you so much for joining us here on News in Focus on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
That's Anisha Patel from Law for Palestine, based in Berlin, Germany. After the break, I will be hoping to speak to Ntlamulo Ndlela from the MK Party. They released a statement on the current VAT reversal, which is, we're hoping, to take in effect on the 1st of May. Do stay tuned.